Are you slightly surprised that they're going better than you thought you might be? Yeah, probably. Yeah. And it's kind of nice to not do something in the text and start putting it in the real world environment. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about, if you would have a blank screen set to your front view, we're going to talk about a command that's not even in your text, but it's one that can be quite useful. Many times what we want to do is we want to draw and we want things to be slightly in front of or slightly behind. And there's a way to control that without switching your UCSs. Okay. So I'm sitting here with a blank screen and I have set my front view current. Now, if I draw on this screen a line, a rectangle, whatever, we know that if I draw that, okay, so I come in, I'll pick a point here, I might say at 2, 3, and I end up with a rectangle. So I see it where it's normal to my screen. What is my Z dimension here for this rectangle? It's 0. Okay? Now, let's say I did that and I know I've got something I want to put in front of it, like maybe some text or something like that. I have no choice except to draw on the 0 plane, right? And then zip to the right side view, select it, and try and move it, right? Because now I'm normal to that way. But you can do this without switching. And there's a command out there that's called the elevation, and it's ELEV. This controls which plane you are drawing on the dimension that's in and out of your screen. By default, elevation is set to 0. Therefore, if I draw that rectangle, my Z dimension is always 0 unless I specify a Z dimension, correct? Now, if I type in the elevation command and tell it, hey, I want you to move that 1/1000th of an inch forward, then I draw it, and you're going to see that my Z dimension for everything I draw on there is going to have that Z dimension, because I've moved that, in essence, I've moved that plane from this board just slightly forward, and I'm now drawing here planar. Now, that will control those elevations. Keep in mind, your snaps always override your UCS. So you can't be snapping if you want on that stuff. And let's see how this works real quick. If you're doing civil drafting, you use this all the time because we use it for topo maps. A real popular contour interval, those of you that are familiar with what a topo map is a 1-foot topo or a 10-foot topo, or if you use if you hunt off of a USGS 7.5 minute quad, which most of us that do that do, you probably got a 40-foot contour interval. So we're 40 feet in elevation. We're trying to describe that with topo lines. We draw those on elevations. So what I'd like you to do to demonstrate this is let's just go ahead and draw a rectangle on your current screen. And just any coordinates are fine. Now let's do the same thing, but first let's invoke the elevation command. So if you would type ELEV, right, and you should go automatically to elevation. Now keep in mind, it says what is your elevation? Notice 0 is the default. If I want to put something in front of this, would I use a positive value or a negative value?
Positive.
Right, right-hand rule still applies here. If I wanted something behind it, I'd use a negative value. So let's set this to 1. Okay, just hit 1, enter. You don't see anything. You got a thickness command. Just go ahead and ignore that. Hit enter through it. Now you didn't see a change, but a change happened. Now let's draw another rectangle. Make sure you do not snap. I'll just draw it right inside this one. Make sure you do not snap. Once you've done that, switch to your right side view or just rotate the object up. I'm going to switch to my right side view. Okay. Now, do you see where they are now drawn in those planes? Okay. So I drew this one on the 0 plane, this one on the 1 elevation. Okay. Now, this is a CAD or a drawing file setting. So this file is now set with an elevation of 1 until I change it. So you got to keep that in mind. When I go to another drawing, it's going to be defaulted to 0. So once you sit and you're drawing on that plane, don't forget to switch it back to 0, because most of the time we want to draw here, right? Okay. So just real quickly, go back to elevation, set it to 0, and now you're back drawing on 0 elevation. But this is a pretty useful command at times. Okay. So I'm going to go
What
back to...
happens if, like, you snapped on one of those corners and then you were, does it immediately change it back to once you snapped on one? Or,
Can you restate that, please?
okay, so if I was making this and you said don't snap, but say I did this one and then I accidentally snapped on this one, is it going to turn it into like a this? Or is it going to not do it?
It'll do it. I can draw in between these. The snaps don't care. They will override it. But once you draw an object, it is now in a plane. And so I can't take this thing and I draw from here to here. Now, if I'm using a P line and I try and take that and come back to, I don't know, out here, it's not going to let me because now it's saying, oh, you're out of plane. Right? Because those first 2 points are going to define the plane of an object. I could do a 3D polyline and snap it wherever I want.
Okay, I'm confused though, but it didn't change my UCS, it's still set at 0. When you look at the, you know, where it's sitting, why wouldn't it move out? Is only the Z moved out?
Yes.
X and Y are still at 0? Are still,
Perpendicular to your screen. But instead of drawing on the 0 plane, think of it as pieces of paper. Okay, where by default the elevation is set on my board here. I set my elevation to 1, what I'm doing then is take that board, move it to here, I'm going to draw everything right here. If I set it to 5, I'm drawing out here. But I'm still normal to the screen. Okay, that's all we're doing here. And Cheryl, for your question, just a quick test here. If you take a line, and like I snap from here to here, now I try coming out, I'm snapping points, but keep in mind, it is in plane, right? So that first one, notice now my elevation is on the 0. Then that's a line because I've got one object here and here. Now let me try that same thing with a P line. Okay. So let me get back to my view here. Now I'll do a P line. Because a P line is one entity. Okay. So now I'm trying to snap, and I don't even know if it's going to let me. Because I clicked the first one on that surface, right? And I say, no, can't get it. Notice where my snap is on the endpoint? It's snapping the space out there in that plane. I'd have to use a 3D P line.
Well, I did a rectangle. I did the first snap on the Z is 1 plane. And then I went to one of those corners, and it stayed all of the Z in the 1 plane.
Okay. Well, that just switches that plane. Okay. I just wanted you to know that command. All right. Next thing. What happens when you screw up? And how can we fix it? Okay, so if you would just draw a P line that looks something like this, make sure it's closed, and we're going to extrude this some distance for a solid. So I'll just extrude mine like -4. Okay, so I'm sitting with some solid.
I'll just call it.
All right, so my point of this exercise is when I usually start with P lines, right? Which are fairly accurate because we've been drawing 2D for quite a while. And then I go ahead and extrude those and I union those to other objects. And before long I get to the point where I'm thinking, you know, I have no idea what is going on here. I can't fix it. I don't know what to do. With my point being, you don't have to undo all the way back. In fact, many times you do not want to because you might undo back through some step you want to do. So what you generally want to do is you want to get rid of the solid, but you want to keep the line work so that you can edit it and then restart the whole process. Okay? Probably the best way to do it is through the explode command. But you can't explode a solid just once. Okay? You're going to see this happen. When we explode a solid, the first time you explode it, it's going to turn into a surface. Then you're going to explode the surface, and it will go to a region. And then you explode a region to go to lines. So you're going to have to explode them multiple times to get to where you can edit the line work. Okay? And I'm going to switch mine to a different view so that I've got my surfaces kind of covered up here. Let's go ESM. For some reason I'm not getting my, okay, so I'm going to go to a conceptual level. All right, so we're going to take this guy, and I'm going to hit X enter, select my solid, and hit enter. It looks like nothing happened. Now, if you need to have your property dialog box open here, though. Okay, so you'll see what's going to go on. Go ahead and select one spot. So it went to a region, which in essence is a surface. But I think I maybe misspoke. Didn't I say you exploded once for a surface, one for a region? Sorry, it was back to a region, which is the same as a surface, pretty much. So now I have a surface or a region on my screen. Now, many times we need to go back to the original line work. Explode the whole thing again. So X enter, select everything, and hit enter. Now what are you back to? Select something. Okay, now you're back to lines. And so if I said, you know what, on my original line work was all good on this, and so the back part is actually not good, so I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to delete all this stuff out. I'm going to re-keyline my object, join it together, and start over. Okay. So many times this is a real quick way to get you back to where you want it. And maybe you made an effort here, and every line on here is good except for these two. Okay. Now I can go back and edit them, start over. Okay. Because it doesn't take a lot of time to run another solid off of that. All right, so when you explode them twice. Okay, so I'm going to go back and take this solid one more time. So I got to join it all together, and let's extrude that back into a solid.
Mine wouldn't join either.
Yeah, you might have something out of plane or lines off a little bit. You might have some editing to do there. I'm just going to redraw a shape because I'm not going to play with it right now. All right, did everybody, I see people still typing, I'll wait just a moment. Okay, is everybody where they got a solid on their screen? Raise your hand if you need more time. Okay, so we've got this solid here. I've got mine kind of tilted up. Now, what we're going to do is actually, there's two commands that are on page 198 and 199 at the end of chapter 8. And I don't know if you want to go there or not, but the two commands are convert to solid and slice. Now, we haven't studied surfaces in here, and I said we're not really going to, but in essence, for some shapes, you have to use surfaces. Okay. For your final project, some of you may have to go with surfaces. Now, convert to solid basically takes a surface and converts it into a solid. I'm not going to go over that one because it's fairly straightforward how to use. I'll leave the text for that, but you should play with it. Now, the slice command, though, is the only way you can really get a free-form surface. By that, when I say free-form, irregular curves, things like this. Picture the front of your car hood. I mean, is there really a set radius on your cars in today's world? I mean, if you got a pre-1960s, like I drove not that long ago, it was all box-shaped and it was all normal. Now everything is wind resistant, so we got free-form surfaces. How do you create those? On a solid. You do them with surfaces. Okay, so I've got my solid here. Now I want to draw a line right in front of this, so I'm going to real quickly throw my elevation out to 1. Okay, so I'm going to type elevation, set it to 1. I'm going to go back to my UCS so I know which plane I'm drawing on. By the way, when you hit your UCS, it resets elevation, so you got to redo it, sorry. Now, I'm going to draw a P-line, and I want to make sure I do not snap. Okay? So I'm going to hit my P-line, I'm going to hit F3 to turn off my snaps. And I'm just going to draw and digitize, oh, I just got a snap right there. Got to turn off my O track also. Thought I hit F3, but I'm still snapping. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to digitize this P line like such. And I'll throw mine on a different layer so we can see the difference between them. I'm going to tilt this up a little just so you can see it. So this is really kind of the situation you're trying to do here.
Is that just a normal line?
P line. Draw a P line. Okay. Now I'm going to double click my P line. That opens P edit, right? And I'm going to hit F to fit it to a curve. Because how do we do irregular curves? We do points along it, right? And then a P line is a great line for this because it then does a NURBS curve where all these points are tangent to each other.
Becky, did you say, did you join or just go on?
Nope, just use the P line. Let me go back to my front view and I'll show you what I got going here to reset my elevation. So my P line is here. Now, keep in mind, I drew it such that here's where I'm going to get this surface that I want to deal with right here. And I probably set this to set XY coordinates, you know, if I'm doing this in real life. I think the one they used in your text was how do you create surface of a mouse. Okay? That's really what we're going to show here. Okay.
But I'm saying, did you make a P line then, you just joined, I mean, did you make it?
P line is all one object. Just double click it, hit the fit option,
Oh, just
and
fit,
get out.
okay, you fit it,
Now, can I extrude this P line?
Yes.
Yes. Except what am I going to get? Because it's not closed.
Like a flat surface.
I'm going to get a planar surface. You can extrude a line. You can extrude a P line. You can extrude a closed P line. But you get different things. Lines and P lines that aren't closed, you get surfaces. Closed P lines, you get solids, right? And we want solids for this class for the most part. We actually want a surface on this one. Okay. So what I'm going to do, now keep in mind, I can use all of those things on there, revolve or whatever. If I wanted to take this and go through 3 dimensions, I would go ahead and build another path that maybe did this and sweep this thing along it, and it will go there, right, and create that surface. For now, I'm just going to extrude it straight. Okay. So I'm going to do the extrude command. I'm going to grab this guy and I'm just going to shoot it back out through my object. I'll go ahead and put it on a different layer so you can see it.
Are you supposed to turn off all the snaps before you do the design?
Yes, you do not want to snap on this. Okay, I'm going to kind of move forward. Now, here's an exercise I'd like you to play with on your own, because you might come across this. We took this and we just extruded it straight. In the interest of time, I don't want to do this as a group. What you ought to do is get this P line, create a path for it, get in your right side view and draw another P line that undulates in that direction. Sweep this along that path so that you get one that goes. We would be all day, I think, trying to do this with a group of 14 of us. So I'm not going to do it as a group. If you get into it and you can't get that to work, get with me and I'll handle it individually. But I think it's a good exercise for all of you to play with. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make this surface into part of this object because I've got to get it onto here. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're creating a cut surface or a slice surface. And this command's on page 199, slice. Okay. It is right up, where the heck is this thing? Well, I don't know where it's at on this ribbon. It used to be right up here with our extract edges, extrude faces. Let me just, oh, there it is right there. It's still the same one. They changed the icon from the last version. So it's this one right here where my cursor's at. It's just to the left of extrude faces. Okay, that's your slice, or you can just type slice. Okay, now, when you come into the slice command, go ahead and activate it. Look at the command line. It's saying, give me the object to slice. So what do you want to retain here? That's what it's asking for. I'm going to select this solid right here. Okay. So we're going to select that one. Okay. Once you've selected it, hit enter. Now you've got a bunch of options here because you don't have to create a surface to slice, but it's probably the easiest way. You can actually digitize points and it will figure it out and all that. So we want to choose our surface option here. I think this one kind of brings up the most. So I hit S enter. Now I select my surface. Okay. Now it's performed the option as soon as you selected that surface and hit enter. But it's now asking you, do you want to keep both sides or what do you want to do? One option is, because I clicked up here, it's going to try and keep that. And it's going to delete this. Well, maybe I just usually just hit both on this when I use it. That's the default. So go ahead and hit enter. Now I should now have 3 objects. Just to show you, I'm going to come up here. I don't want the top. It's now a separate solid. I'm going to click it and say delete. I'm going to click on my surface, say delete. And then I now have that surface on that object. Okay, and I've got that free-form surface. You can see how that works? It's a way for you to get these weird radii enveloped into an object. Okay. A very useful command. You don't use it a lot. You try and stay away from these surfaces because they're hard to build, but at times we need them. Okay. So that was the slice back in chapter 8. Yeah, page 199, 200. I think that was the end of 8. All right, let's jump up and try and get through 12 before we take a break here. 12 is a solid edit command. There's a lot of nice stuff in here. But again, we don't want to do them all because not all of them are really pertinent. I want to hit just the biggies here that I use time and time again. start on page 315. Page 315, taper faces. Now again, let's set this one up so that we can see how this command actually works. I think quite a few of you probably had this command if you got into the angle jig yesterday. So first I'm going to set my front UCS. I'm going to draw myself a rectangle. Now we're going to extrude this rectangle, but I want you to use taper faces when you extrude it. So I'm going to type extrude. I'm going to select my rectangle, hit enter, and then I get the taper option on there. Do you see it on the command line? Hit T, enter, and we'll just type in a value of, say, I don't know, 15 degrees. And then you can use your cursor, but in essence what I want you to do is get some shape that looks like a rectangle, or a prism, excuse me. Okay, so here's my shape. Now, here's the big reason I wanted to go over this. I'd like you to switch to a 90-degree view from the view you just drew on. I drew on the front, so I'm going to switch to the right side view.
Is there, the only way you can change the view is you actually have to go into the 3D modeling tab and then do it there? Or is there a place to find it?
You can do it off the command line. Okay, this is an instance where we get into taper faces quite often, because when we extrude an object, we generally have 2 or 3 sides that slope on it, but not everything. And so we'll use the taper option to bring it up, even a circle. I want a truncated cone or whatever the case might be. It's the same process. The thing you got to remember as you cut